We know the cost of living pressures. We cited the story earlier tonight where schools are having to get charities to come in to feed kids because families' budgets are so tight. How long till we see large numbers of people foreclosing on their mortgages? And Dimitri, I'll start with you. Are we headed for a recession?
It's hard to say, but in some respects, on a per capita basis, we already are in recession. So I think it's a tightrope, but as more immigration comes in, it kind of masks the figures as well. I think the RBA is doing the right thing in doing what they're doing, and I mentioned this to you earlier, Chris. I carry this around as a prop with me wherever I go when I talk about inflation. This is a genuine Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe note for $20 trillion. As bad as the cost of living is now, inflation is worse. And Zimbabwe didn't get into its problems because of COVID or an oil shock. It got into it because of bad government policy. And what we need is better government policy. We need a productivity agenda. We need to reduce taxes. We need to reduce government spending.
Alexi, the recession?
Well, there's certainly some small businesses who are doing incredibly well and have done all through COVID and continue to grow and innovate and do exceptionally well in their circumstances. We know that, for example, small businesses in outer suburbs of cities are doing very well because people are working from home. Yep. Those who have been able to innovate, digitise and work those channels are doing exceptionally well as well. But you can't homogenise small businesses. Some are really feeling the pinch. Some in certain industries are certainly suffering a great deal. If you've got high energy costs, if you've got high costs of manufacturing, it's getting tougher and tougher to produce those goods. But for other small businesses, they're doing exceptionally well, and it depends on the industry, depends on the location, lots of different reasons.
And Kosha, similar question really. You've got to quash inflation, but you don't want to tip the economy into recession. Do you think we can avoid recession?
I think, sadly, the consensus seems to be that it's likely coming on some scale. I think most of the major banks' chief economists have all put it at a higher than 50% probability. And I agree with Dimitri that the RBA is in a very unenviable position where they just have only one tool in their arsenal, and that's the one they're flexing for half the picture. I also agree with him that the real measure, as we were discussing, is GDP per capita. So even if technically we avoid a recession or it's milder, people can feel what that means. The only way we don't, Chris, is I think if there's an exogenous event, such as a big Chinese stimulus of demand that happened in 2008, which sort of saved Australia, but that doesn't look likely either. So maybe there's some external event that we aren't foreseeing, but otherwise structurally I think it's coming.
Yeah, rocky times ahead. A little bit of a pause in the interest rate cycle today, but rocky days ahead for the Australian economy. Thanks so much for joining us, Kosha Garda, Dimitri Burshtein and Alexi Boyd. Really appreciate your company.